dedication of this audience to worship any and all Star Wars content is problematic. It is. Because if everything is amazing, then nothing actually is. One sec. So I was 100% skipping the show. I had zero hope for it, and also zero interest in further witnessing the disintegration of the Star Wars I know and love. However, a family member of mine actually really liked it and wanted to know what I thought. So then began my disheartening journey watching the Acolyte series on Disney+.
This is the worst!
I actually did like the first couple of episodes because I love learning more about the Sith and also wanted to explore this era and the timeline a little bit more. But in reality, my standards for Star Wars at this point are so painstakingly low that I naturally grade on a curve because I just love Star Wars. So naturally when you love something, you want to like it, right? You're the target audience. But even on a curve, like damn Disney, what was this? I also thought the concept for the show was unique and, most importantly, generally safe from jacking up any established characters or timeline. And against all my optimism, wishful thinking, coming into this with an open mind, I was very wrong. But I was fine just letting it be a crappy show and leaving it at that. But then the show was canceled and I witnessed the fallout within the fandom, and it was so weird, so distasteful, and also so painfully delusional that at this point, you're pretty much forcing those of us who aren't alt-right nor white men explain to you the reality of why this show was canceled, since that seems to be such a point of contention right now.
All I can do right now is put on a brave face and go out there and be their leader.
It's over. We are screwed.
With that being said, here are my top 5 issues with this show. Number 1, the witches. For the life of me, I cannot comprehend why they decided to create an entirely new breed of witches when the Dathomir witches would have served their purposes, except 10 times better. And I can prove it to you. First off, considering that Lucasfilm makes every effort possible to preach down with the patriarchy.
Star Wars is very like patriarchal.
But then you don't utilize the witches from a world where the woman is literally over the man? It's right there. Like they're right there, that's a slam dunk. How did you miss that? How?
It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for them.
Especially because we're already familiar with the Dathomir witches' use of the Force/magic. So all that time wasted trying to establish who/what these new witches were, to no avail, might I add. Okay, still don't freaking know. But that time could have been used to flesh out Osha and Mae, which was desperately needed. Not only that, but you kind of shield yourself from criticism because the Dathomir witches were introduced in season 3 of the Clone Wars, which, as we know, George created, right? So there's like a natural respect and love for anything that came out of George's head or that had his approval. Not only was this an obvious miss, then they took it a step further, because why the freak not, and made these witches as cringe as humanly possible. Truly, new levels of cringe were achieved.
I am a victim of a hate crime.
What even is their power, y'all? Is it chanting together? Pushing someone a little hard with the Force? Ooh, scary. And then hypnotizing someone, but only if you're holding hands with like 30 other witches who happen to be sitting next to you. But then, if you're disconnected, you all freaking die. Nothing makes sense with these witches. Nothing means anything. What was the point? Why is the show here? I don't know. Why am I here?
Real life characters, it's that it adds a whole other pressure to it, and you wanna get it right. You wanna be.
And worst of all, they didn't care enough to make sense of it. They just introduced random freaking crap that made no sense and just said, okay, moving on.
Sure.
And also, what in the actual hell was the Ascension besides the worst scene specifically ever put to screen? Okay, that scene was awful. The witches literally looked like they were climaxing with the Force.
Stop it. Get some help.
This scene, for me, was harder to watch than Scott's Tots in The Office. That episode I have never been able to rewatch since the first time because it's so cringe. But at least in The Office, those writers prep the audience to know that Michael Scott is about to pay the full consequence for falsely promising all those kids money for their futures. But in this show, they didn't even give us the same courtesy to know what was coming. It goes from 0 to 100 with sky thrusting singing that is so off key that it's so jarring to the ear. forced climaxing. And you're just left wondering, what is happening? And more importantly, why is this happening? Why? ¿Por qué? If I was a prisoner of war and you played the power of many on loop, I would tell all of our nation's secrets, like full stop. I'm telling everything. And we don't even know what all this pageantry at the Ascension did. In comparison with the Witches of Dathomir, you always saw the green mist around them, so it was always clear what they were doing. Whether possessing / enhancing Savage Opress, or giving Darth Maul legs, or literally bringing some of the dead sisters back to fight the droid army, we always got the gist of what was going on when they were doing their witchy chanting because the mist told the story. But these witches are making awkward, forceful pulling and pushing motions with their hands. And we never really understand why. What is the power of many supposed to do? Like, are they summoning someone, sacrificing someone? Are they getting aroused from this large hole? Like, you know when you're heating up a burrito in the microwave and it sounds like World War II in there with the loud popping noises, so you take it out thinking it's ready to eat, only to find out that it's still cold? That's what this scene is to me. Just a bunch of noise that leads to nothing. Just a cold, sad, and soggy burrito. I mean, worst of all, now the show's over, it's freaking canceled, and we still don't know what that was all about. She got a moon on her head. Like, cool, I guess? These are just knockoff Dathomir witches to me with way less power and zero purpose.
Psych! That's the wrong number!
Number 2, Osha and Mae, aka the main freaking characters. I never knew any of their motivations. Their personality and goals literally flipped to whatever the scene needed. It was bizarre. I'm being so serious right now. I spent 90% of the show asking, is that Osha or Mae? Because their alliances and motivations swap so much.
I'm gonna kill myself! Wow. I'm going to kill myself and it's your fault!
Neither one of them had a distinct personality, besides, you know, their kid versions, of course. It was obvious one's trying to kill a freaking animal, the other one isn't. Those clearly were evil sis versus normal sis. But the grown versions have no depth or defining characteristics besides short hair versus long hair. And once they both have short hair, it's a nightmare to figure out. And let's go ahead and get this point out of the way, as I know it's the main accusation. People who like this show loft against people who don't like the show or the acting, okay? I do not care if this entire show was full with an LGBTQIA+ cast. Do not care. What you do in the privacy of your home is none of my business, truly. I just want well-written characters with consistent motivations and character development that's organic, not adjusting personalities for whatever is needed in the scene to move the plot forward. Without that foundation of basic characteristics, it made it impossible for me to connect with Osha and Mae. I didn't know who they were, so what am I gonna connect with? And it's not only them. I couldn't relate to anyone in this show. Well, actually, I take that back. I related to Master Torben when he took the Exit Earth shot, because my goodness, I also wanted my suffering to end watching this show. How did I watch an entire show and I cannot tell you a single defining attribute of who the main characters are?
Well, settle down, Scott.
No, I'm not gonna settle down.
No way,
Get in the back, please.
Boo.
Boo.
You go from being someone's savior to their murderer in a couple of hours. Make it make sense. The lack of emotional depth and common sense with this show is astonishing, because she had so much loyalty to go save Soul, but doesn't bother hearing his side after the bond she supposedly had with him the entire season. Then there's the lovely reveal of them being the same person at the end. How exactly does that work? At first, I was like, oh, thank God. That actually, I thought, was a creative way to explain why they swap motivations and personalities like crazy. But nope, by the end of this show, they just acted like how normal twins would act. So how exactly are they one? What are the implications? What does that really mean? Like, what's happening?
This is fine.
They didn't know. I have never been less interested in the protagonist / antagonist at the center of a film or show. Never. And from an acting perspective, across the board, I believed every other character more than Osha and Mae. The other characters actually seem like real people living in this galaxy. Not necessarily interesting people, but nonetheless, I did believe their acting, for the most part. Quick caveat. The main area this problem stuck out to me with Osha and Mae was the inability to act out real human emotions, motivations, or beliefs. To me, Amandla was just saying the lines without emoting the way her character should / would if they had a real personality, if they're a real person.
You are going to learn to be more professional, Luke!
It's your job to sell the character. You know, it's not just reading lines. Other actors carried her entirely in every single scene. I had to rely on the other supporting characters' responses to Osha or Mae to get the gist of what was actually happening in that scene, what the emotions that were supposed to be brought through the screen that weren't brought through. I was just looking for cues from the supporting actors. That's not normal. But it simply was not coming across her face because her face was the same the entire show. I left every scene feeling like it had a question mark at the end.
Wait, I just said it. Why? Why?
It's so insanely erratic to where Osha and Mae just felt like a plot device. And you just can't have that and genuinely expect it to succeed.
Let's end this. I'm about to end this man's whole career.
Number 3, creepy Soul.
Certified, never boy, certified, pedophile.
Saul came across like an absolute disgusting, lock him up with P. Diddy creep.
Come on.
Like, he gave me a visceral reaction to where I had to look away from the TV to distract myself because of the ick that he gave me slobbering over a child who is a stranger. And I guarantee if you're a woman watching this, you know exactly what I'm talking about. He reminded me of every creepy older man from my childhood. It's very sad but very common for young girls, especially girls of color like myself, to have experienced an adult male making you feel uncomfortable by commenting on your beauty when you were a child. Just gave you the ick. And no, I know Soul isn't drawn to Osha because of her physical appearance, but being drawn to a child is problematic in and of itself.
I had no idea. Well, that's not gonna hold up in court.
It's entirely abhorrent. And the worst reality of it all is that it didn't have to be that weird. They freaking chose to make it that weird. Here's a good example, okay? I got recruited as a kid to play travel softball, and my parents, you know, my dad being from Venezuela and my mom from Puerto Rico, they didn't even know what travel softball was, you know, nor did they have the means to give me the exposure that other players had. I just played locally. So the way that I got into travel softball as a kid was a coach from a rival team approached my father, okay, approached my father after a game. Okay, he did not approach me. And he told my father that I had talent and asked if my parents would be cool bringing me out to a practice with his team as a tryout. So that conversation was entirely focused around my abilities as a softball player and nothing else at all. Now, imagine if that same coach went up to my father saying he felt a strong attachment to me and that he felt destined to be my coach. I'll tell you right now, my dad would keep me far, far, far away from that man and literally never let me be alone with him in any context because of just how creepy he was. My dad would clock it and I would never see that man again. So they very well could have approached this Osha-Soul relationship in an appropriate way, but no, they took every chance to make Soul's obsession be known, even within the story. This is a Jedi Master who deeply attaches to a stranger who's a child, mind you, okay? She was a child. The dude has no self-control, just consumed with his feelings for her. Let's not also forget that attachments are forbidden for Jedi, let alone Jedi Masters who are supposed to have mastery over their emotions. So this plot point is inappropriate in real life / real world terms and in fictional Jedi terms. It shouldn't have happened. Plo Koon and Ahsoka are an example of how to do this correctly. Obviously, younglings create a special bond with the Jedi who finds them and brings them to the Jedi Temple. That Jedi pretty much replaces the mother-father role immediately. But then once that youngling gets to the Order, Masters immediately begin teaching them to abandon all attachment. And as younglings turn into Padawans, that connection is one of mutual respect and dedication. But that's where it stops. Not weird obsession, but loyalty to your people, the way we saw Ahsoka being loyal to Plo Koon and wanting to find him no matter what in the Clone Wars. Then Soul is over here leaning over Osha, overly emotional, promising nothing bad will happen to her. Like, homie, that's not y'all's literal job description as Jedi, aka peacekeepers. To be a peacekeeper, you typically have to go to places that have conflict to then keep the peace. So what kind of Jedi training is she supposed to be doing exactly if you're promising nothing bad will happen to her? It makes no sense. And Jedi are often at the center of anything wrong that's happening or will happen. They feel that's their higher calling in the universe, to serve as like a mediator between the way of the Force and the way of free will. And honestly, it sucks that they did this to his character because I really liked him initially. I thought his acting was amazing until they made him creepy. Disgusting. Holy water. Specifically, all his scenes with Kamir, I freaking love all of them. The show should have been about those two. Nothing more to care about. And since I'm on my soul tangent, I may as well get to point number 4. The Weenie Hut Jr Jedi.
Weenie Hut Juniors? Are you saying I belong at Weenie Hut Juniors?
Oh, no. Sorry. I was actually pointing to the place next to it.
Super Weenie Hut Juniors?
Yeah.
I personally didn't care at all when the witches called the Force the thread, because in this galaxy there are countless planets and species, and then there's the Outer Rim, etc. So in this huge galaxy, it's completely expected that there would be multiple interpretations of the Force. So I don't care what they call it. What I do care about is how inept these Weenie Hut Jr Jedi Masters seem to be when using the Force. Putting aside the fact that they couldn't freaking sense a dang thing going on prior to when Quamir is literally standing in front of them, they couldn't even defeat this relatively young rogue Sith when they're like freaking 10 to 1? 10 to 1. Any other movie or show with this ratio of Jedi to other person, it's a clear dub. This is ridiculous. It's like having 10 Thanoses going against one Thor. The inability of these Jedi Masters to not be able to resist Quamir, force pulling them into his lightsaber? Into their impaling deaths? That's what I expect from a youngling. How? I feel like this show was so committed to making Quamir seem as cool and strong as possible that they turned the Jedi into stormtrooper level IQ in combat. This entire fighting sequence, as cool as it may have been, it was just the biggest insult to the Jedi because it made a complete mockery out of them. So I couldn't even enjoy it. This would just never happen in this galaxy. And that's because the Jedi and the Sith are generally equals, with the Sith typically maybe having an edge because they draw from hatred and anger, but overall it's typically 1 versus 1 or 2 versus 1 if it's an advanced master versus a younger master. For example, we had Obi-Wan Kenobi versus Darth Maul, Ahsoka Tano versus Asajj Ventress, Count Dooku versus Anakin and Obi-Wan because Dooku was more advanced. But then Yoda versus Dooku because Yoda was more advanced. The last time we've seen a freaking platoon of Jedi going to battle together is in the Attack of the Clones because they knew they were going into war. So I hated the inaccuracy of this one rogue Sith guy who isn't even a Sith Lord, mind you, master, wiping out like 10 to 15 Jedi, not only wiping them out, but owning them in both strength and in the Force. Completely pathetic. With these Weenie Hut Jr Jedi, Darth Sidious wouldn't have even needed an army to destroy the Jedi Order. He legit could have taken them all by himself. Didn't even need an army. The dude literally laughed while fighting with Maul and Savage Opress. Like, the dude was a beast. And honestly, their attempted message of the Jedi being bad or whatever would have actually worked had they made the Jedi command some sort of respect, because then they're actually a viable threat and an oppressive force. But that doesn't work when you make them out to be a bunch of wimps in Party City costumes. How cheap were those Jedi robes? I've seen cosplayers make more realistic Jedi robes. So as the show undermined the Jedi, it only further undermined the story they were trying to tell. I was totally fine with the different perspective on the Jedi Order because it's clear that it was the Jedi's pride that led to their fall with their willingness to wage war. And the more they got involved in the war, the more they got caught up in all the politics when they're supposed to be the peacekeepers, but now they're generals in a war. They're no longer set apart. Which I actually think that episode 14 of the Clone Wars series, which I love, about the Lumen did an amazing job showing the contrast and the real conviction behind what it truly means to be a peacekeeper, where the Jedi take it as engaging in conflict to create peace, but the Lumen refuse to engage at all, maintaining peace by not raising weapons. It brilliantly showed the true contrast of convictions without being preachy and telling the audience which view or stance was right or wrong. It showed the flaws and the strength of each perspective, and it was up to the audience to decide which we agree with. So if you're going to take the angle that the Jedi are 100% in the wrong, then freaking commit to it, and you better make dang sure you have objective proof points for how they're in the wrong. And this show did not do that at all.
Why are you the way that you are?
No way were the Jedi in the wrong for killing Osha's mother, or Soul. And no, it was Soul wrong for killing the mama. And from a storytelling perspective, I think you should understand that if you're going to make the Jedi the antagonist of the story, then all you have is just a show of a bunch of bad people with no one to cheer for. And in the Star Wars stories today, we've always had a hero to root for. Even if it was an anti-hero, there was always someone who we would consider the good guy. So the only way to really make this work is with amazingly written characters and motivation. But even then, you're getting away from a foundational piece of Jedi equals good, Sith equals evil that this franchise was literally built from.
There are two kinds of people in the world: compassionate people and selfish people. Selfish people live on the dark side, the compassionate people live on the light side.
And this doesn't even take critical thinking, y'all. Like, just hear me out. If the Jedi truly brainwash their younglings when they're the most malleable, then those younglings would grow up in that indoctrination, which happens for the majority of Jedi, because people who are brainwashed are not able to sit on the fence, like how Green Lady does. They end up being strong believers for their cause. And yes, I'm calling her Green Lady. I don't remember her name, and I don't care enough to Google it. Like, I just don't. I'm not sorry about it. Which honestly proves how forgettable every freaking character in the show was, and how their existence in the Star Wars universe is entirely irrelevant, so I don't care. But back to my point, the intense devotion to the Jedi Order and the strict set of rules to exist by younglings are taught from childhood. It either turns them into a devout Jedi who firmly believes in the Order, or into a devout Sith who firmly disagrees with everything in the Order and is willing to literally kill them all to prove it. Either way, the Jedi Order either makes them zealous to keep the Order or zealous to destroy it. Ahsoka is the only exception to this rule when she walked away from the Order without slipping into darkness. But by making the Jedi engage in evil, corrupt, self-serving behaviors, they're breaking the DNA of what it means to be in the Jedi Order. Even Obi-Wan, when everything was lost, he spent the rest of his life carrying out his final order to protect Luke, because that's just how they're built. So my issue with Green Lady is that the only Jedi we know to this point to carry out the calculating malice that she was displaying are literally Sith Lords who are undercover, like Count Dooku or Palpatine. Not only that, but this show goes out of its way to make the Jedi seem as incompetent as possible. Hence my renaming them the Weenie Hut Jr Jedi. How they handled Soul's death was insultingly dim, because earlier in the show, we all heard Green Lady say that Soul is an invaluable Jedi Master to the Order, right? But then they just take her word for it when she accuses him of being a freaking rogue murderer. Did no one else in the Order know him? If not, then how in the hairy donkey balls is he invaluable? Not one Jedi Master vouches for him or has historical context to draw from. Not one Jedi. That's not how the Order works. They are obnoxiously in each other's business and are loyal to the end. Like, dude, even when Count Dooku had literally left the Order, full stop, he was out of the club, and yet other Jedi Masters were still vouching for him.
I think that Count Dooku is behind it.
He's a political idealist.
Ladies and gentlemen,
not a murderer.
We got him.
GTFO. And while I'm here ranting, what in the actual hell was the whole
A Jedi doesn't pull her weapon unless prepared to kill?
What? Who told you that? They're first taught to use it to sense the Force, and then as a defense, and then as a measure of combat, if it came to that. So we're just making things up as we go.
Boom. Bam. Bop. Bada bop. Boom. Pow.
I guess why not? Nothing matters. Ugh, someone bring me Torben's shot.
I just want it to stop.
And on that note, there is one Jedi who truly stands out from the rest. The poster boy of Weenie Hut Jr, Jedi Master Torben. His motivations are that he wants to go home. Like, that's it. Dude, you're a Jedi. You have no home. There is no higher calling for a Jedi than to follow Jedi orders. So this is your home until the job is done. I mean, you have no girl or hobbies or a life to go home to. So what on earth are you homesick for? The only thing that was missing from this scene was him saying that he wanted his mommy.
Mommy, tell it to stop!
And then, in ultimate weenie fashion, he elects to remove himself from planet Earth because why? And leaving us with his last weenie words.
We thought we were doing the right thing. Forgive me.
Can I have a vodka tonic, please?
What are you talking about? How on earth was this guy qualified? How? And on top of his whiny behavior, you're so weak that you got your mind taken over by a witch so she could threaten the other Jedi to leave if they want you returned to your normal state. How on earth was that one event so self-damning that he meditated for years? Took a vow of silence just to off himself, and in all that time he didn't reach any sense of enlightenment, he didn't learn any common sense, you know, and not one single person in the Jedi Order wondered what happened to him on that trip, or want to help him, or they couldn't sense his guilt, and they're like, I'm interested what that's about. Why is he feeling guilty? The Jedi either just don't give a crap about other Jedi in their order, or they're just too stupid to notice.
Stupid!
You know, I originally thought that the Jedi wiped out all the witches because they felt threatened and wiping them out was the only way they could get the children to safety or something like that. But this, protecting yourself from a witch who is going into Harry Potter Dementor mode.
The worst thing about prison was the Dementors. flying all over the place and they were scary, and then they come down and they suck the soul out of your body.
While simultaneously Thanos snapping her daughter into freaking dust, and the Jedi are just supposed to watch and stand by? She didn't use her words, so neither did they. She chose violence, so did they. Torben's guilt would have made more sense if they killed them all without being provoked. But he was actually a victim when Mother Anastasia used the Dark Force or the Thread whatever to get into his head. But in true Weenie fashion, Torben runs away from any logical thinking or self-control and says bye-bye to planet Earth because Earth is just too hard.
Whatever you call it, I am running away from my responsibilities.
Which brings me to my final point. Nonsensical storytelling. You have to reject everything that you know about basic human behavior to try to enjoy the show.
Boy, have you lost your mind, because I'll help you find it.
The way they try to make up for nonsensical plots and gaping holes in the story all throughout is by dumbing down the characters to an asinine level.
That is sort of an Okie afterbirth.
What was that?
Again, mind you, these are supposed to be the most respected people in the entire galaxy. Yet everyone in this George Lucas forsaken show is a fumbling idiot trying to figure it out as they go along with no wisdom or reason. Exhibit A, Soul spends the entire show hiding the fact that he defended himself and the girls from what looked like an obvious threat. But then when confronted with it, he didn't bother explaining the crucial context of why he killed the mom. The dude has been carrying this information all these years and couldn't rationally explain the situation. All we get is yet another inappropriate scene of him trying to say he loves her. I was actually pretty glad he was choked right there because hate him.
Trying to strike a chord, and it's probably
So gross, freaking groomer, disgusting. Like if he truly cared about her, like he claimed, he would have wanted her to know the full truth. But instead he just gives up like a loser and decides to die because why? Because of guilt for defending himself? I mean, her killing you is obviously gonna send her down a dark path. So you care so little about her that you wouldn't fight her, even if just to reason with her to not become freaking evil? In no way was justice served in this entire annoying murder mystery they drug over the whole freaking season. None of it made any sense.
Dwight, you ignorant slut!
So much so that creators on this platform had to literally create videos trying to add meaning or an explanation for scenes that clearly made no sense. And on the topic of nonsensical storytelling and having to abandon everything you know about basic human behavior to try to make sense of what these boneheaded characters do from scene to scene, can we all just take a moment and acknowledge how brainless Mother Anastasia's decision was? Her mindset supposedly is that she's going to go into this interaction with the Jedi knowing she's going to let Osha go with them, right? Okay, she's letting them go, but then as soon as she enters this area, she doesn't immediately de-escalate the situation when she walks in by telling her followers to lower their weapons. Quite the opposite. She walked in like she changed her mind and was going to fight to keep them. So what the freak was her?
I was going to let Osha go. That's what she wants. She chose you.
Seems like extreme gaslighting to me. They genuinely believe that Anastasia is innocent in this interaction. Nothing makes sense, dude.
I declare bankruptcy!
Like how the power of many has been hyped up for episodes only for it to get you all freaking killed with one Jedi wave. Seems like the weakness of many to me.
Boom. Roasted.
And lastly, with like these weird freaking characters, Quamir goes from being an insane, disturbed, badass murderer to someone who's acting like a guy who's been in the friend zone for years and is begging to be noticed by the girl when he's actively following Osha around. That same cold-blooded killer took a shower in front of Osha to try to seduce her? Yuck. Anyone who's left the Jedi and is engaging in any type of use of the dark side of the Force, they don't feel love or anything like that, typically no. It's all about power to them, getting revenge from those who betray them, hence him wanting to kill Mae for betraying him. Very on brand. But then all of a sudden, just because he's into Osha now, why, I don't know, she seemed weak to me, he was no longer interested in killing Mae for betraying him. All of a sudden now this rogue Sith type Force user engaging in forgiveness?
You having an unnatural allegiance to losers.
And then wiped her memory because why? Take her with you. That was so unnecessary. What even is this weird show, bro? Like what?
I'm gonna lose my freaking mind!
The storytelling in the show was so horrible that it made me wonder how we even got here. How has Star Wars, one of the greatest stories ever told, been riddled down to the absolute cheapest, soulless pieces of content in modern history. And you know what? I believe I have found the main culprit, if not a major contributing factor for the watering down of Star Wars shows. And keep in mind, I draw from my expertise in marketing, have my master's in advertising, I write strategy for content plans for media channels ranging from social to site to television ads for a Fortune 100 company in the United States. So when it comes to coming up with the best plan to launch a new product into the world for an audience / target audience to consume, that's literally what I've done for years. That's my expertise, okay? So all that background to say, I am an innately curious human being, and I never just look at the what of a problem, but I always like to look at the why. So that being said, my theory for what has led to the continual degradation of Star Wars stories is the abandonment of compelling storytelling for flash over substance. While I love social media, there are many ways it has affected and how businesses and media approach content creation, some for the better and others not so much. And in the context of Disney Star Wars, it's certainly for the worse. And I personally feel like nothing directly impacts how this crappy content keeps getting sludged out to us more than reaction content. Specifically, inauthentic, toxically positive content.
Toxic positivity is a form of gaslighting, and it involves minimizing and dismissing someone's experience or emotion. It's providing them with false reassurance instead of empathy.
A person who wields toxic positivity as a weapon builds a culture of social control by creating an illusion of false harmony.
We get a chance to see people react to what we've done. And I love that more than anything.
I couldn't be more excited than to see your reaction to these new shows.
The official Disney Star Wars YouTube channel is promoting them. The reason they put these people in this video is so that Lucasfilm can say, look everyone, people love Disney Star Wars. Just look at these people. They're cheering, they're screaming, they're clapping, they're crying.
When someone does finally bring up a problem or an issue, they make it personal.
People who are just generally racist, misogynistic, never would have watched Acolyte to begin with and made it their life's work to hate campaign against it. Don't want to see queer people coming into this fandom. That goes beyond anti-woke. That goes into the bigotry.
Okay, so that's how it's gonna be.
People are just coming out of the woodwork to say, oh, I hate it because the writing's bad. No, you hate it because there's a lesbian.
We could go to war. No. I'm for real. I'm for real.
And if you use positivity as a way to control and manipulate other people around you, well, then you are a sociopath and you should be called out and exposed.
For what the Acolyte represents to not just Star Wars fans, but to our society, to where we want to head to as a society, which is a much more inclusive society, it is important for us to rally around it and lift it up and be like, hey, we want more shows like this.
Son of a bitch!
The dedication of this audience to worship any and all Star Wars content is problematic. It is. Because if everything is amazing, then nothing actually is. And the moments that actually deserve those crazy, positive, excited reactions, they're cheapened because you react like that to literally everything. So how can Disney / Lucasfilm hold us as an audience to get an accurate picture of what we want more of if we're not being honest with our opinion and with our reactions? And don't get me wrong, I know the main culprit here to the storytelling being crap are the main executives in charge and the writers who have the power, but even then the writers are just doing what the execs want them to do. They're at their mercy. And no hate to reaction videos, I've made them myself, but I quit that content because not all my reactions were super post worthy, so I just never posted them because I know the type of reactions people are hoping to see, but I'm just not willing to be fake like that. One reason reaction videos burst onto the scene because it was a seemingly genuine and refreshing type of content and sharing their favorite videos with other people who reacted the same way. Here's where things went wrong for our Star Wars fandom in particular. As this content continuously went viral, Disney and Lucasfilm realized all they really had to do was give us something to react to. Story be damned. And now, Star Wars is purely flash over substance, in which all new shows are limited to quick gimmicky tricks and cameos that seem specifically made to make people go, oh my gosh, dude, or let's freaking go, or the worst, in my personal opinion, the fake crime. Oh my gosh, I can't.
Oh my god, corny, lame, boo, tomato.
I can't with the fake crying, y'all. I can't. So in terms of the Acolyte, it's seeing a lightsaber bleed, cameos of Yoda and Plagueis, solely gimmicks designed to distract from the huge nothing sandwich that this show was. The way you introduce one of the most iconic, famous, and epic Sith Lords is by having him creep from a cave. The audacity! Ugh, one sec. And to prove my point, from what I saw on social media, that's all it took for reactors to yell, cry, and soil themselves. This behavior exists for every single show, not exclusive to the Acolyte, but it reinforces mediocre content. It absolutely does. It's certainly not responsible for it, but it sends Lucasfilm a message that that's the content that we as a fandom are excited about.
So you better check yourself.
I'm not even kidding or being dramatic. There was literally a tweet with a screenshot of the 2 cameos of Yoda and Plagueis who had nothing to do with this story. Nothing to do with the story. And the tweet said, "This is peak Star Wars." Peak Star Wars.
Son of a bitch!
A 1 second flash of a character is peak Star Wars. Like, you see what I mean? Look closer at the Yoda cameo. How did they not consider the implications here? Because according to them, Yoda is either an absolute idiot or perfectly fine with covering up an insane amount of murder. Ruining, no, obliterating Yoda.
You done messed up, Aaron!
I would also argue that it cheapens the voice of fans who actually really do like the show. Fans who are critical thinkers, think for themselves, who can vocalize all the reasons that they really love a show. Their voice is unfortunately thrown into the bunch that loves everything, so it's less impactful. Be so for real with me right now, Star Wars fans. Is this really what you consider peak Star Wars entertainment? Cameos that have nothing to do with the story. If you want to see Yoda so freaking bad, just go watch the prequels or the original trilogy, or buy a poster of him, or buy a Toyota and put on the back Toyota. I saw a reaction video of someone trying their hardest to get a tear out when Osha killed Soul. Characters that you just met, and one of them has 15 personalities but also 0 personalities, and the other needs to be barred every elementary school in the entire freaking galaxy. Those are the characters that warrant you soiling yourself. And oh my god. You see how fake that is? Yeah. And you know, I understand the desire to want to have a viral reaction video, but these videos are beyond cringe and insanely dishonest, because there is no way on God's green earth that this Disney after school special type show is making you freak out like that. Reaction videos that I have loved in the past and to this day, the reason I love them so much is because they're genuine and they're not forced. Genuine reactors do not react the same to every single piece of content. So if you cry and jump every time you see a lightsaber ignite, then your reactions seem fabricated, over the top, just for the sake of shock and for granted. And eventually, what happens is you just seem like a crazy person, and on top of that, you lose all credibility because you're always trying to outreact your last video, even if this piece of content does not warrant that over-the-top kind of reaction. It only undermines your own voice and your opinion in the fandom. Quick caveat, I do know that we're not all the same. We all have our different experiences. I do believe there are some scenes that may very well touch your heart in a way that is special to you, that maybe it doesn't resonate with me as much, but that's still pretty rare in this context because we all love the same things, Star Wars. And we all know how basic human emotion works. So I do not believe for a second this show, The Acolyte, a now canceled show, is making people freaking cry and hoot and holler like they're watching their team win the freaking Super Bowl for the first time in franchise history. Now that I think about it, the only time that Star Wars has ever made me get up and hoot and holler was actually during the one-way out scene in Andor. I legit wanted a weapon and I was ready to fight with the boys. 100%, let's go. But this show earned that reaction. They built up to it with the desperation we saw the prisoners endure and their progress from hopelessness to literally willing to lay it all down for freedom. Absolutely nothing. This show warrants jumping up and down. At most, this show deserves maybe an eyebrow raise for interesting and fun lightsaber fights. That's it. This show was made for an audience that simply doesn't exist, or else it would be getting another season. It's really as simple as that. So I encourage everyone to voice your own opinion. Not an opinion you're rewarded for having, because no company, no amount of perks, no amount amount of views is worth forfeiting your own integrity and your voice. And to all my fellow nerds who fall on either side of this split fandom, remember that it's not that deep, fam. It truly is not. It's okay if someone likes the Acolyte. I have someone in my family who likes it, and it was cool. I asked, why do you like it? And he said, I loved all the fighting. It was the best Star Wars ever. I was like, okay, yeah. I agree that those are probably some of the best lightsaber fights that we've had in years. I can agree with that point. But it's also okay if someone doesn't like it, okay? They're not gonna burn your house down. They're not gonna murder your grandmother. They just like or don't like a fictional piece of content. And you can leave it at that. Leave their freaking name calling because you sound ignorant, you sound uneducated, and you sound like you have no emotional intelligence. So everyone just take a deep breath, go touch some grass, go read a book, go on a date if you can get one. See that there's life outside of this fandom. Just be the good that you want to see in the world. It's that simple. Look at the man in the mirror. If you made it this far, thank you so much for listening to my long rant, and I would love to know in the comments what you liked or didn't like about the show. Genuinely open to all perspectives, so I appreciate it. I'm gonna finish this glass of wine. It just magically got more full. With that being said, I rest my case. God bless.